Marc Friedrich und Matthew Piepenburg im Gespräch auf Englisch.
And it's always interesting talking to you, and that's why we said let's do it for the public. So, so what do you say about the elections in the US?
Yeah, look, it's a very interesting time in Germany and the US.
Yeah.
And these are two very important days in the last 2 days. I mean, the same day that Trump won, you had a coalition breakdown here in Germany. And
A historic day, yes. It should be a holiday, a public
really,
holiday.
It's
What a great day.
fascinating. And it's fascinating. I was just in the US for 3 weeks before I came to Europe. And then, of course, this major election. And then what's happening in Germany, which a lot of Americans don't understand and don't see. What I see before we get into politics, it's a fascinating convergence of forces that make no sense to me. This big, I think this entfernung, this distance between reality and facts and political speak, which makes no sense. I mean, facts are facts, Tatsachen sind Tatsachen, Wirklichkeit ist Wirklichkeit.
Exact.
Aber die Politiker haben versucht, das zu verstecken. They've tried to hide these realities. That shouldn't be left or right. That shouldn't be rich or poor, black or white. It should just be truth.
Yes,
and I think there's objective truths, and certainly in math there's objective truths. But real quickly, in America, we have 4 or 5 companies that control 100% of the messaging. Most of it's one message. Germany's not that different. That's not sensational. That's not doom and gloom. That's a simple fact. If you control the message, that's a powerful thing.
Propaganda.
That affects opinions. That affects understanding. Also, of course, we have central banks, and we have a system that controls not only the information, but the monetary policies, the cost of money, et cetera. So all these things were very clear to many of us, but not all of us. So this election, which seemed like such a shock, ignored the voice of the majority, which was self-censoring, which was afraid to speak common sense. Common sense, again, shouldn't be left or right. It should be based on certain facts that were very much hidden or twisted. And that is a dangerous thing in a society. And
but people wake up, Matthew. People wake up. You saw the election in the US. You see the breakup of the coalition in Germany. And people are just realizing, okay, the media is not telling us the truth anymore. And I think it was Scott Jennings from the CNN who said, hey, we have to be honest from now on, or the people will just switch off the TV set. Anyhow, I think the change is coming. People wake up, and it is very important. And we are definitely in a paradigm shift all over the world. Not only in the media and in politics, also investments. Gold, 45% year to date. It's amazing. Central banks buy gold with both hands, actually. And we see gold outperformance to the TLT. Amazing. It's a historic paradigm shift we are just witnessing right now all together. And I think it's so important to invest in limited goods, in real assets for the next couple of years. And we see, I think, much volatility and crazy things happening in the world.
Well, you talk about the TLT, which is the index for the U.S. Staatsanleihen in the Staatsbund. But you look at it's Bitcoin TLT, it's S&P TLT, it's gold TLT. In other words, trust in sovereign debt is falling.
It's collapsing.
And here in Germany, your interest rates are about to spike. There's an overselling of German bonds. That's going to affect the Renditen, or the yield on the 10-year or the German Bund, and that means the interest rates go up and the cost and price of debt goes up. That's very dangerous when you are in a recession. Ich werde augenscheinlich klar sein für die deutsche Zuschauer. You are in a recession, regardless of what your politicians tell you.
I think we're in a depression, actually. I think one guy just told me in the Handelsblatt, said German economy is in a depression. And we're in a recession. We're the last one in Europe. We're losing on all terms. And we see deindustrialization. We see companies not investing in Germany anymore. There's no foreign capital moving to Germany. It's horrific. And I think we are close to a recession in whole Europe, but also in the world. And I'm expecting a stagflation the next year. What's your outlook for the macro picture in the next year? What do you expect 2025?
Well, I think it all goes back to your point about these bonds and these TLTs, and that means when you have a distrusted credit system or a broken debt system, of course, that impacts the markets, it impacts society. In terms of the next year, there's a lot of talk about das Endspiel. The endgame for me...
The endgame is on.
The endgame is clearly inflationary. But that does not mean we couldn't have a deflationary or disinflationary moment. That means a market mean reversion, a recession, higher rates. Those are disinflationary forces. But the solution, die zauberhafte Lösung, ist immer wieder das Gleiche. It's Maus klick Geld.
Printing money.
And people can say that's not inflationary. That is the definition of inflation. And die ganze Menge, the broad money supply has globally gone up, I think, 7x in 20 years.
Yeah.
Das ist verwässert. You've diluted the purchasing power of your euro, your dollar, your peso.
Everything.
Das ist unvermeidlich. Das ist geschickter. Das ist grundsätzliche Mathematik. Es ist augenscheinlich klar für die Leute, die die Tatsachen in die Augen sehen wollen.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't again be left or right or political.
Yeah. And we have to remind the viewers that a monetary system always dies in inflation. It never dies in deflation.
Yeah.
But I accept as well. I accept stagflation next year. We will see a recession. We will see inflation, but also a deflationary shock.
Yep.
And deflationary shock will be like collapse of banks, for example.
Yep.
And then the central banks will move in, and then they will lower the rates.
Yep.
They will put more liquidity into the game,
Yep.
and then we see an inflationary melt up in all asset prices.
Yep.
You agree, or?
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, how can you not see it? I mean, you could argue what could change that scenario. Well, if we, obviously politicians left or right, but in particular in the left, in my opinion, look, we don't have das BIP or das Steuern.
Yeah.
We don't have GDP and tax receipts to cover the spending, to make promises stick, to keep people in office. So if you're not going to cut spending and you're not going to be honest about your debt, you can keep pushing the can or kicking the can or avoiding the obvious.
But how long?
But for how long?
What do you think?
So
what's the end game? When is
well,
it end?
you can theoretically do it forever, but you're going to do that at the expense of the currency. You're going to have to destroy your currency.
Exactly. At one day, people will raise up.
Well,
there will be civil unrest.
Yeah.
There will be revolutions, or even perhaps worse things. So
well, this is durchaus Geschichte. This in der Fall, without exception. Without exception, whether you go to Weimar, which is easy, or Yugoslavia in the 90s, or 1789 France, or ancient Rome, or the Ming Dynasty, there is no exception. Whenever you have a debt crisis, whether it's in the markets or in the Roman capital, you have a debt crisis that leads to a market problem, an economic crisis that leads to an inflation crisis, which always leads to social unrest. Always. Ohne Ausnahme.
Yeah.
And social unrest is always reacted by centralization from the left or the right, extreme left or right, and that is throughout history without exception. So we already are going to feel the social unrest when the inherente Kaufkraft, when the purchasing power of your money that you measure your wealth by is diluted or debased. Diese Entwertung. That's theft. That's invisible theft. Diese unsichtbare Steuer von Inflation is theft.
Yeah.
And so you have to have your alternatives to that theft.
So what is it? What's your alternative?
Obviously, for me, it's gold.
Yeah.
You know, I know
what
with you, it's Bitcoin and gold.
Gold and Bitcoin. You own Bitcoin?
I have some Bitcoin, but
Yes.
I got to say, I had it from a long time ago. But that's an hour discussion. It shouldn't be a fight. It shouldn't be a fight.
They're brothers.
It shouldn't be a debate, but they're very different asset classes.
But both sound money, and this is important.
Yeah, well, I would debate you on whether we'll have to debate that.
You own some Bitcoin,
I like
but
to
you have
speculate.
gold. You have
I like
gold.
to speculate.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, I'm selling my book. I'm in the gold business, but for a reason.
Yeah.
But I don't make fun of Bitcoin, and I can't make fun of it. You can't ignore it right now.
Yeah,
but there are a lot of grundsätzliche Frage, questions I have about it, which deserves more time than a few minutes.
Yeah.
Right now, kurz und knapp, for me, Bitcoin is still a speculation asset. It nicht ein Werthausbewahrungsmittel. It's not a store of value for me. Es gibt keine Beweis. There's no proof to me yet.
You heard Paul Tudor Jones, who said, I'm long Bitcoin, I'm long gold, I'm long stocks, because you need these limited assets in your portfolio for the next years, because the inflation wave is coming, the politicians are all greedy, and you have to protect your purchasing power. And he's one of the smartest guys.
Absolutely.
He's outperforming the market.
He's a neighbor of mine in Virginia, and I'll say even Ray Dalio says, I own gold and I sprinkle Bitcoin on top.
Yeah.
So you can't just take one or the other and make fun of each other. I think we're very much in the same Weltanschauung in Hinsicht auf the fundamental problems in the economy and an anti-fiat solution. But again, stagflation, inflation, the debasement of the currency to buy time, to buy votes, to buy dishonesty, to stall the inevitable. Es ist unvermeidlich, diese Probleme mit unserer Währung. Und das ist unvermeidlich.
Exactly. They will collapse. And that's why you have to own gold, for example. You have to own stocks. What else do you own? Do you own gold stocks as well, or commodities?
I look at the free cash flow on the miners, and this is important because I have a different view. I certainly believe in gold, and ultimately I think there's huge value in the miners. What we see in the S&P and my exchange in the US, the best cash flow on the S&P is in the equities miners.
Yeah.
Lowest stock prices.
Yeah.
And you have to ask, what's the disconnect here? And you got to be a little bit skeptical because there is a sense of self-dealing and poor management in certain miners. And so if you're choosing a mining stock, which is a huge opportunity, you have to really look at how they're using their cash flow to reinvest as opposed to self-deal. And again, when silver, for example, goes from 23 to 30, the free cash flow is immense. It's immense. But why are the stock prices down? It has to do with operational risk management, which has always haunted the mining space.
Yeah, you have to look really inside the companies to invest into mining stocks. What's your outlook for silver?
Well, look, I just look at the gold-silver ratio. You got gold at all-time highs. Eventually, the ratio has to come together.
Yeah,
So,
I accept. But what kind of ratio do you expect? Because I expect on the long term beneath 20.
yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
So there you do the math.
In historic times, it was always around. In Germany, it was 16.5 to 1 ounce of gold.
Yep.
Yeah. And if we go back there, then we have a silver price of over $100.
Then you get into the weeds and the complex, wonky language of the futures market and what that does on the COMEX and the New York exchanges or the London exchanges. It's open secret that there is price fixing and contracts.
Manipulation.
Absolutely.
Come on, call it like it
but
is.
But now with Basel III and also with just the outflow of metals from these exchanges and with a new exchange now in Shanghai, fair pricing is coming. There's less paper contracts because there's less silver to manipulate the paper contracts. Eventually, that price fixing game comes slowly to an end.
Finally.
And then you get free price discovery in silver. And then, of course, the supply and demand mismatch in silver. There's a great opportunity in silver.
You think silver will outperform gold?
Yes, in terms of the speed and slope of the price move, absolutely.
Perfect.
But you have to be geduldig.
Yeah.
Geduldig.
Patience. But hey, if you're gold bug, you know how to be patient because we had such a long time of desperation, actually, you know. But now we have a nice foundation for the next bull market.
It's like that movie Gladiator. Are you not entertained?
Yeah.
I mean, what has gold done for you this year? Is that not enough? And then, of course, there's the question of what will gold do in the future.
What's your price target on gold?
Well, look, I just looked at something from Beacon Securities. They had all the experts, from the banks to the experts in precious metals. You have a range from 1,900 to 5,000 in the next year. Even Goldman Sachs is 3,000. So what I'm saying is the experts don't know. I don't know what the price will be at the end of next month or next year. I do know this, that they will debase the currency to solve a debt crisis.
Exactly.
And so gold in the long term, for langfristige Anleger, ist es augenscheinlich klar. It's going to go up and to the right. But the problem is when gold's at 5,000, 6,000, what's the cost of a tire, food, a restaurant bill,
how will the
hotel?
society look like? Because many people don't own gold. So I can't imagine a civilization where gold is hitting like 10,000.
Well, ausstehen Augen, ausstehen Sinn. You notice how no one talks about gold on Wall Street, in politics, left or right, in England, the Tories, the Labour, in the US, in this most recent election, Republicans, Democrats, no one talked about debt. They talked about a lot of real problems. A few discussed the deficits. We're ignoring the elephant in the room, which is debt, which is currency risk. And we're also ignoring the power of gold to be your own central bank. Individuals can be their own central bank. You don't get rich on gold, you just avoid being poor. And what's happening with the gold market, it's not that the gold market, as Rick Rule said, is in a bull market. It's that fiat money is in a bear market.
Exactly.
And fiat money is in a bear market because history and math have told us throughout history this is unvermeidlich.
Yeah. Always remember, if gold is at a record high, fiat currencies, the euro, are on a record low.
Yeah.
That's it. Matthew, thank you very much. It was
It's
great
always a
talking
pleasure.
to you.
Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.